Hi, I'm Troy Johnson from the African American Literature Book Club, and I'm here with B. Amari Jackson, who's the author of a really fantastic middle grade book, and he's going to share more about it with us right now. The book is called Jelani's Key, and it's being published under the African American Literature's Book Club imprint, AALBC Books for Young Readers. All right, so Amari, tell us a little bit more about the book.
Sure, I appreciate you having me here. And of course, we're here at Black Art in America. Before I even get started, which of course is the leading site for Black online art and art in general in the country. And we are very happy to be under here with Najee Dorsey, who's a good friend and friend of both of ours, and also, of course, one of the art masters in the country when it comes to the business of art and, of course, art itself, him being an artist himself. Let's talk a little bit about Jelani's Key. Jelani's Key is a book for middle grade readers. Very fortunate to have the book being published by my good friend and brother, Troy, through ALBC. And that's pretty much a dream come true right there, because we actually talked about back in the day a couple of times about LBC eventually getting into the publishing space. And I'm very happy that Troy has made the decision to do so. So Lion's Key would be a book coming out on the platform for young readers, as Troy said previously. And you've already published one book, of course, as well, which actually, before I go on, why don't you talk about the first book?
Oh, sure. The first book is called Running to Fall by the critically acclaimed writer Kalisha Buchanan. It's already won a major award um, from the Independent Book Publishers Association, and I'm really excited about it. Again, working with people like Amari and Kalisha is, you say it's a dream, but it's a dream come true for me because we're talking about really talented artists who are conscious and who are, just anxious to share important stories. And, Jelani Key is an example of that. And so I'm proud to be able to help produce that because it's a collaborative effort. And, it's all about love, really, and helping young people grow into prosperous and successful adults.
Yeah.
But talk to us more about how that your book will actually help accomplish that.
Yep, very much so. And as Troy just said, it is all about love and also young folks getting to a point in their life where they can obviously recognize certain aspects about themselves and how powerful they actually are. And trying to dramatize that in a way, particularly for young Black boys, although being universally a story where not just young Black boys, but young Black females as well can benefit from seeing themselves in certain spaces they may not see themselves. Jelani Key is basically the story of almost a rite of passage where two young boys who are in an inner city environment are trying to realize themselves. They go through a process where they both have lost loved ones, like far many of our young brothers and sisters in our community have dealt with loss at a very young age. And these two folks are trying to do something different with their lives. And they are challenged by a mentor who wants to take them on a special journey, both psychologically and physically. And in that process, this mentor provides them basically a challenge that is based in math, it's based in science, but also based in the past in terms of their own African history and their identity. And in doing so, after going through this challenge, it tells them a lot more about their own individual families. It tells them a lot more about their heritage and ultimately about their African diasporic history, and takes them on a fascinating journey in the process.
Yeah, that's really one of the things that struck me about the book is that it talked about African history, ancient Kemet, and where did you learn that yourself? Because as a young boy myself, I was oblivious to that.
Okay.
And it's one of the reasons why I sell books today, because I've discovered a lot of this stuff as an adult, and I can only imagine what my life trajectory would have been like had I known this stuff as a young person. And so you helping to introduce this information to young people is crucial and critical. But how did you learn about this stuff?
Appreciate the question. I think what happened with me at a fairly early age, it was never that I actually knew information directly about my African history and my our diasporic history, our very rich diasporic history. It was the fact that my parents believed in exposing me to things like the art around us in this place, at Black Art America, that reflected me. And I think that's obviously a big process when it comes to kids and knowing who they are and having some sense of identity early on. And so I think I definitely was acclimated to that process at home. A lot of the, Jacob Lawrence, images around me at my house at home growing up. My parents both being out of the Washington, D.C. area, very, and when it was segregated, and very powerful Black community in the Washington, D.C. area. And me being raised, born in upstate New York and then being raised outside the city in northern Jersey, we were always kind of aware of who we are. And my parents incorporated those kind of discussions very early on in my life into our dinner meals and everything else. So I always had a sense of who I was, no doubt about that. What happened though, and because, Troy, you'd be the one, the main one to be relevant in the space, what I'm about to say is that the thing that really got me down that path in terms of my own African history were books.
Okay.
Books,
Okay.
because the fact I was an avid reader. My father to this day, and my mom, rest in peace, are both very, very avid readers. My father, who's now 85, he still devours probably about 4 books a month, 5 books a month, very avid reader, and we talk about books all the time. So that process of me and asking the question, I always believe, because my parents taught me, you ask the question, why? I think all people, and especially children, need to ask the question why. Always question. And the more they question, the more answers will come. I always say we take a step toward knowledge, then knowledge takes a step toward you. That process of growing up in an environment which was nurturing, both parentally and communally, in Orange, New Jersey, the blackest city in the state of New Jersey. And so I think that as well. And then asking the question why, in terms of why we see the things we do around us, why do we not see live images of ourselves being reflected back to us? Obviously, the need for places like this, Black Art America, the need for entities like African American Literary Book Club, Literature Book Club, all those things are reflections of self, and those are very important in the process, especially when it comes to young folks, for ensuring that we have that sense of identity. And I think through a combination of those things was the way I eventually was able to get to some kind of consciousness and then be able to hopefully deliver some of that conscious back to our community as well.
Now you see why I'm publishing this book. It's just, it's just a profound statement that you just made. And, you really speak to the spirit of what I'm trying to accomplish. And, you actually articulated a lot better than I have. Now, you also, one of the people who blurbed your book, actually read it and supporting the book, Anthony Browder, you went to Egypt with him a couple times, huh?
Sure did. Actually, I went one time with him, though. We were there for almost a month, and we went up and down the country. This was back in 2010. And my first novel, The Savion Sequence, was basically based in that trip. I started back in 2006, I started looking at some design elements, ironically being in an art gallery, looking at some building design elements that I saw that I thought were communicating something. And this is back when I was working at the University of North Carolina for the Sonia Haynes Stone Center for Black Culture and History. And at that time, I felt that there was a sequence, a code, which proved to be true later, that was within the design elements of the building, and that I wanted to write a story around that, my own process of discovery, and that became the Savion Sequence, which is available on AfricanLBC as well. And that process led to, I knew to finish that book, I had to get some environmental elements from actually have gone to Egypt. And that's what I did. And so I actually finished the book in Egypt in 2010.
Wow.
And that would have been the fall of 2010, right before the Egyptian Revolution, the Arab Spring. And then it was published, of course, on 1/11/11. The person who actually introduced the book, I went on a small tour with him in the DMV, the DC area, Maryland, Virginia area, was Anthony Browder. We sang Cofer books in DC.
Oh,
We also were on the radio that day because actually Anthony Browder, who I call Baba Tony, actually had a radio show that went throughout the DMV area.
right.
So that was the segment I was speaking. So to answer the question, yeah, my trip to Egypt, the ancient name being Kemet, that trip was very, very profound in terms of my own process of growth and discovery. And I think that everyone should have, especially Black people, people of African descent, we should have those places that we go that remind us of who we are. Our ancestors talk about remembering ourselves. We are here to remember our ancestors, but we also are our ancestors. We come from them, and so therefore, part of our process of remembering is to go ahead and make sure that through our lives, the symbols and the signs that we see of ourselves, that they can help remind us who we are. When we travel to places where we have a very rich history, then that remembering process is brought full circle. You know. And so I always am a big fan of folks traveling, big fan, especially children traveling, if they can, because they have so much more sense of their identity if they do travel at a young age. And also, travel is knowledge. You know, I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people who are more active in the travel phase, why their children usually do a lot better because they've seen so much, from an environmental standpoint, they've seen so many different things that they have a much more open view of the world as opposed to staying in one community or one place for a prolonged period of time. So I'm a big fan of that process of discovery. I also would say that as a kid, that I was very adamant reader in terms of books like Nancy Drew Hardy Boys. I had the whole series. I don't know if you remember those old sets back in the day. I had the whole sets of those because it was a process. The books weren't necessarily written in the best way, and they didn't reflect me. But what they did reflect was that my sense of discovering, wanting to know the answer to what the mystery was. And I think I've taken a lot of that as I've gone on in my life and keep that sense of mystery that hopefully a child would have.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I with the website I say African American literature is for everyone because it really is. And in the way that you were able to read Nancy Drew, I read Encyclopedia Brown, and in fact, there's a clue that the boys had to solve in this book, and it reminded me of those books. And just having solved that was
Took you
interesting.
somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. And so the book, it's the two Black boys, but it's a universal thing, and it's really anyone can benefit from reading this book. Not just Black children, but children of all backgrounds can benefit from this book. And I hope it does. People from outside our community, certainly people in our community should embrace this book. But I think that they're universal themes that everybody can appreciate.
Right, and especially in terms of a rite of passage, meaning that everyone has a process, whether it's officially called a rite of passage or not, that we go through in life. A lot of times it can be something traumatic. In Jelani's Key, the book is started off by the loss of a grandfather, and what that means. And the best friend, the person who becomes the best friend, Jelani, Bakari, also has a loss in his family, his father. Those are unfortunately far too common themes in our community. But that was just their particular process that got them to a point where the rite of passage that was presented to them was even more relevant in terms of learning not just about their culture, but about even their own family history and what the legacy of their grandfather and their father and their loved ones in general and what that means. But that message, just as Troy said, I believe is relevant to everybody.
Yeah, and just the things that the boys had to learn as part of this journey they took. One, I don't want to give away the whole book, but there's a bully, and you know, why was he a bully and how did he not become a bully? And, you know, it just, you know, just all of those things in terms of what it means to become a man or an adult. Um, important stuff. And you talk about travel, and one of the things that the African American Literature Book Club will be doing is giving people a attend this the trip with Browder to Egypt. And so for people who attend the trip, one of the things I'm going to be doing is packaging a reading list, a number of books that if you go on the trip or not, you know, books that, you know, should be in everyone's home. So Anthony Browder's book, um, Charles Finch's book will be on that, and your book will be a part of that list. I think that, and you know, something for everyone. And you know, I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, no, it's you know, it's like I always talk about something called the Black Book ecosystem, and the way you related your experience and how you came to produce the book, the Save Now sequence and Jelani's Key, you know, speaks to the spirit of that. And you know, that's something that, you know, we all need to do in order to uplift each other and tell our own stories. And, you know, so it's, you know, the reader and what books the reader chooses to buy, where the reader chooses to buy those books, you know, what subjects the authors cover, and you know how the books are sold. But it's all part of a continuum, um, a community, and that community is important. And you know, it requires everyone's support and everyone's participation. And you know, I don't want to get on the soapbox, but you know,
Please do.
If we continue to support a handful of companies that are motivated solely by money, you know, we won't be served.
Sure.
And the only way we can be served is by, you know, supporting the businesses who are in business to make money, but at the same time are also mission driven, and mission driven to uplift Black people, uplift, you know, help others understand our story and appreciate it. Because again, if they don't, um, we will continue to be marginalized and overlooked and discredited. You know, just it, what you do is important.
What you do is important. LBC has been around for years. LBC has been a big part of my life for years, in terms of always reflecting images of us back to us. Black Art in America has been in the big, where of course we are here today, Giddings Point, Georgia. And please, if you have a chance to come to Black Art America, please do. And it's an extraordinary experience. And having folks like Troy, ALBC, and having folks like Najee Dorsey, who of course runs Black Art in America, having them collaborate and work together. This is the spirit of that ecosystem that of course Troy is speaking about. Anthony Browder as well. And all of us coming together to work with each other. And being very proud about the fact that we can do business together, that we can celebrate ourselves, excuse me, our rich history and our heritage and our community together, and create that kind of ecosystem that works and for all of us where we thrive, and we can make sure we extend that hopefully to our children, the folks that come after us as well. We're no longer here.
All right, I'll leave it at that. Again, Mario, thank you for your time. Thank Najee Dorsey for this beautiful space. There'll be another video that we can take a look at and check this out. Again, thank you all for your time, and Mario, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.